and this way you gain the analysis of the market segment, of the market structure, and you can, what's more important, you can position your product on this market. Positioning your market means adjusting it to the tourist needs. What benefits the market segmentation may bring? Of course, as I mentioned a while ago, adjusting to tourist needs, that's the most essential benefit. But also getting through with the information about your product to the tourists that you find could be interested in your product. Besides, with market segmentation, you get better promotion. You can direct the promotion to those tourists that would be interested in it. So, at least you assume that will be interested in it. Finally, the market segmentation and its benefits, it's observing shifts on the market, observing how the market is changing, how tourists participating are changing, their attitude, their needs. That's why it's so important. And then if we know that it's worth to make this market segmentation, we can get to the point how to make this segmentation. And we have a number of criteria how we can divide the tourism market. And of course, those mentioned here are not all possible, but they cover majority of different segmentations. Number 1 to 4, these deal with your guest, with some features that we can describe our guests. So this would be the geography, whether they come from your country or from abroad, from which part of the country, whether it's the countryside or town or city. The demographic, whether they are old, young, whether they are parents with children or parents without children. The economy, so mainly how big income they have and how much money they would spend on the tourism activities. Psychology, sociology as well. So their lifestyle, their motivations, their personality, their attitude towards tourism and towards creative offer in tourism industry. But describing your client, your guest, it's not everything with the market segmentation. There are also different, let's say, parts of this segmentation process that you can cover. And this is the buying process. So simply how when your guest makes the decision that he wants to buy your product, how does he fulfill the process of buying it? Does he pay online? Does he pay on spot? Does he pay in advance? Does he pay all money on place? Where he searches the information about the product, what makes him decide in this process. And the next two criteria, so number 6 and 7, is connected with the product itself. So not with the client, not with the process of buying, but with the product of itself. So features of the product, how we can describe the product, and profitability. So what profits does this product bring to your guest? With this oil mill presented before the break, it brings the profit, like supplying healthy food, like giving some educational background, giving a possibility of spending time in interesting way. Well, that would be probably the most important. But in each case of different product, we can search for something else. How we can conduct this segmentation process? Once again, if we do not have an access to big budget, and we do not have an access to some precise research, then we can try to run this segmentation process on our own. And we can run it just answering some basic questions. Basic questions like here, who is your guest? Who is your guest, meaning where does he come from? Is he single, or he's with family, or he's with company? Is he with his school? When does he come? How much does he spend? What he asks about? What he's missing about your offer? That's all the information that you can get from the guest, even without asking him about it, or at least just watching him. And of course, talking with him would give much more precise information. What problems does your guest have that you can help solving? For example, you have your offer in the neighborhood of some seashore, and usually the guests are spending time on the beach, just lying on the sun. But when the weather is not okay, then they search for some other activities, and then that's how they come to your place. And then the problem you help them solve would be spending time when the weather is not okay. And that may sound a bit strange or peculiar, but that would be a sort of a problem that you help solving. The same would go with this: what's important for your guest, what are his ambitions, how the typical day look like during their holiday, and quite important, not less important than the previous, what does your guest fear of? And we can discuss we can think about it, what your guest may fear of, that your product will help to overcome this fear. For example, when we have young adults with small children, one of the most important thing for them is whether the children will not get bored. They want to do everything in order for their children to have nice time, not to get bored, to entertain themselves. And that's their fear. And you, as tourism provider, you have to deal with that fear. You cannot say, oh, that's not important. That's what can you fear here? There is nothing to fear about. That's their fear inside them, and you have to deal with that. If there is the, let's say, youngsters, young adults without children, their fear, of course, I'm giving some stereotypes, but it does not necessarily have to deal with your guests, but that's some sort of starting point for the discussion. So those young people may be afraid that they will miss something. They will miss some experience. They will not attend something that their friends did, that they will not visit places that their friends visited and put the photo on the Instagram. And that's maybe their fear that you have to deal with. So every tourist has some fear, even if he does not speak about it. And of course, I do not advise you to ask your guests, okay, so now please tell me, where are you from? Okay, and now tell me, please, what do you fear of? Of course, passing such question will not bring very good answers, but you have to keep this question in your mind. Just watching your guest and thinking about him. And now we stay with the area of the market segmentation, but we give a totally different perspective to it. We look at the destination-oriented products. And as we talk about the creative tourism, where we put a lot of stress on the locality, on the uniqueness, that's a topic that we should deal with. How to create offer, create product, which would be destination oriented, and they would find the needs, the expectations of your guests, and what segment of the market your product will attract. So now we have three definitions which are quite similar, definitions or descriptions connected with creative tourism, and each of them has something similar but something extra, which can add something to this description of destination-oriented products and its clients. So in the first point, creative tourism concentrates on local art, local heritage, unique character of the place. It should empower local identity. So we have this word local bolded, and that's the key word here. Local. We should put the stress on it once again, that this product offered to the segment of creative tourists should empower this localness, you can say. With the second definition prepared by UNESCO, creative tourism is travel directed toward an engaged and authentic experience. It provides a connection with those who reside in this place and create this living culture. And for me, the last words here, this living culture, is the key word to this definition. If you want to create really creative tourism product, it has to, let's say, have roots in the local heritage, but it should grow up into the living culture. It should be connected with that. It should influence the living culture of the place. And now we get to the third and last point here. Genius loci, the unique atmosphere of place generated by places, events, and creative people. And if I would be asked what's so important in this place, then that would be creative people. Without creative people, you will not create the living culture here. Without creative people, you will not understand, you will not estimate your the quality of your local identity, of your local heritage, of your local background. So we have this localness, we have this living culture, we have creative people as a basis for creating a product for creative tourists, for this segment of the market. And now an example which I like very much, and it's on one way it's very good example, on the other it's very sad example, because it's so much, there is so much potential in it and it's not being used. So in Poland, and I have a feeling that we are not very single in this attitude, we have a strong tradition of illegal distilleries, of illegal alcohol making, of course only for our own needs. And if we talk about illegal distilleries in Poland, the most important area where the tradition is still being cultivated is the eastern part of Poland. And from time to time, there are some news in the newspapers or on the internet that another big-scale illegal distillery was found by the police, and so huge amount of alcohol was confiscated. A few years ago, the police had an action, and they found such an illegal distillery in one of the forests surrounding Białystok in the eastern Poland, and they decided that it's so well preserved, it's of the even historical value, as it's all the machinery, it's about 50 years old, that it's worth to be put in the local museum. So it was given to the local museum, and now it's on display in the local open-air museum in Białystok. When visiting this place, while reading some promotional materials, you get the information that we have this illegal distillery on display. Come and see it, how this long tradition is being preserved here. So when you get there, when you move around, there are some plaques informing you that you approach the illegal distillery, and then you get to the place, you see the machinery, and you are disappointed. At least when I got there, I was very disappointed. First of all, there was absolutely no information saying about this machinery, how it's being used. Of course, it was not working. That's the problem with the law, that you cannot produce it officially. So That's why you are not allowed to put it in use. But having no background, no information, how does it work? No guide here who would explain how it works. Well, me personally, I had such a, let's say, experience in my life, and I know how does this machinery work. So I managed to explain my mates how does it work, but not having such a person, you will just watch a few metal parts located in the forest. You will say, okay, that's all. Well, not much, and you would continue the tour. So that's for me a very good example of how we do not use the potential of something really local, of some living culture, and what is missing here are the creative people. If I would work in this museum, I would try to invite a man or a woman or a person who had some experience in running such a business in order to give tours. Like with this coal mining process, it's much different experience when you have guide who is originally a miner. So here, if you have this distiller as a guide, that would give you a much different perspective to watching this place, to participating in it. And even though you cannot produce the alcohol here, you can always make some model of this machinery and make the distillation process of some other chemical substance, not necessarily the alcohol, in order to see how does this process look like, how this distillation runs. So to sum it up, it's your task in a way to search, maybe not necessarily for local distilleries, but to search for local heritage, local uniqueness, in order to make use of it and to explain explaining this heritage to the tourists. Without that, that would be just a pack of old metal parts connected with no sense in it. And now the second example of this destination-oriented product. Also, we stay in the eastern Poland. There are few villages in which there is the Tatar minority. There was in the 17th century there was a military regiment made of Tatar people who are fighting in Polish army, and as they were famous for their bravery, Polish king gave them a piece of land in today's eastern Poland. So they settled up there, they built houses, they built the mosques there. The mosques from 17th century are still standing there. And some 25 years ago, a local lady of the Tatar origin, she decided to create Tatar Yurt, which was a restaurant, a very small scale restaurant with just few tables, offering traditional Tatar cuisine. And beside of serving the local Tatar cuisine, I would say that the main course being offered in this place, it was hospitality. It was the Tatar hospitality. And besides, the whole product, it was very fast developing into something bigger. it was not only the restaurant where she was earning money on the tourists. It was like the place of culture where some events, some concerts, some traditional dances were presented, some traditional music, some sporting events. Later, there was the whole festival of Tatar culture being organized here. There was a small museum at the beginning organized in the traditional yurt, later in bigger house. There was some lodging added to it, and everything with this Tatar heritage in the background. And here we have this mixture of local, something which is local since 17th century, of some living culture, as this minority is still present there. It's not like something that used to be and now we recreate it, especially for tourists. We make show for them, but it's nothing to do with present living culture. So it's still the community which is active and living in this area. And plus here, we have these creative people, at least one creative lady who started the whole process. And right now, in every guidebook about the Eastern Poland, you get the information that you should go to Kruszyniany and visit the Tatar yurt, because it's so special and so unique, connected with this place, with this area. Okay, and the next slide. The next and the the last for that part of the lecture. Some sort of sum up about the features of the creative tourists. Who is the client for creative tourism? And we can start the discussion or the talking about it with this statement about 3 generations of tourists. Until the the end of the 20th century, we are saying that the most important group of tourists is the 3S: sea, sun, and sand. So those who are getting to the seashore, lying there, sunbathing, and just entertaining with no special additional activities. Then, at the beginning of the 21st century, we say that this second generation started to be developed with 3E: education, entertainment, exercise, experience. And now we may say that this creative tourism is the third generation, which is developed from the second one. In fact, those two, the educational tourism and creative tourists, are quite similar, and we can discuss whether each tourist participating in such gingerbread workshops does it because he wants to learn how to make the gingerbread, and when he gets home, back home, he tries to make it on his own, or it's rather sort of interesting way of spending time, getting to know some tradition, but not necessarily developing it somehow creatively. But that's kind of academic dispute, so we'll not concentrate on that. We have the features of creative tourism mentioned here. And in fact, before the break, when we were discussing this oil mill and guests who would get to that place, you mentioned majority of those features. And we have those two question marks with educated and conscious. They could be educated and conscious. They even should be educated and conscious to fully make use of this creative tourism offer. But usually, or maybe at least sometimes, they are not well educated, not really very conscious about what they are participating in. And it of course doesn't mean that they are somehow worse guests for you. You can always try to make them more educated and make them more conscious. Generally, tourism is the part of the economy which has its impact on the environment. Sometimes when we talk about mass tourism, it's a very strong impact and not really helping our planet with the climate change and climate disaster. And it's in a way your task to create more conscious tourists. But what I want to put at the end is this number 3 point: creative tourists or creative offer. And of course, the tourists that you will attract and would come to you may be those creative tourists, those open-minded, demanding, educated, conscious, and so on. But in fact, you have to be aware that the majority of the tourists that would come to use your product, this would be, so let's call those average tourists, those in a way mass tourists. And giving them this creative offer may attract them and may make them a bit more educated, conscious, and so on, and open-minded. But it may happen that your offer will not be this game changer, will not make them conscious. It will just be another experience that they collect, and you have to have, let's say, maybe not agreement for that inside you, but you have to be prepared that it may happen that this offer, creative offer, will not create creative tourists. Of course, I hope that it will not happen, and all of your tourists will be creative and conscious and so on. Okay, that's everything for this part. Question whether you have some comments.